everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dan Haidt, and this is Flies in the Kitchen. So how is everybody? What a crazy few months it's been, right? It's been kind of hard, not just with the pandemic itself, which should be enough, with all the social distancing and isolation and quarantines and all of that, but everyone's responding differently, so you never know what you're going to get with everybody you come into contact with. But it's not anything that anyone's used to. We've never experienced anything like this, so maybe we should just try and extend each other a little grace. Dr. Amy Acton, who's the Department of Health Director here in Ohio, reminds us every single day that we are in this together. And we are. I hope we can just support each other, and we'll get through it the best way we can, I guess. But I will tell you this, though. I am really excited to be back with you all. Today I'm kicking off that which I'm calling my North Carolina circuit. So over the next few episodes, I'm going to be sharing some conversations with a few of my favorite artists from the mountains of western North Carolina. And today we're kicking it off with Chuck Brodsky. He's a singer, songwriter, storyteller, troubadour, someone I got to know over the years. He is one of the more unique writers you will ever hear, and for good reason, which we will go into at great length. He has a style that is all his own. And the biggest thing I love about Chuck's music is that he tells really great stories, almost every one of them true, and he tells stories that matter, things that have meaning and importance. There are stories really that everyone should hear. Other things about Chuck, he's a big fan of baseball, history, and hitchhiking. Well, his hitchhiking days are likely over at this point, but one of his most beloved songs was born after thumbing a ride across the country when he was just 21 years old. Almost 40 years later, it's still his number one most requested song at his shows. You'll hear that story too. But being that we're all essentially locked down right now, all of these conversations that we're having are going to be happening over video. FaceTime, Zoom, or whatever is the best way to get a hold of people. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to stay in touch. So we all really should do that, right? We've been afforded this incredible opportunity with the technology that we've been given that we can be instantly connected with just about anybody in the world. So check in on the ones you love and just stay safe. One last thing before we get to Chuck. I have some pretty exciting news to share with you, and that is that I just launched my very own Patreon community. Now, this is going to be a pretty all-encompassing creative space where we can all check in with each other, and I can share a lot of different things, like some pretty exclusive content, not necessarily ready for the general public yet. Things like new songs I'm working on. Members will also instantly get access to a free digital copy of my album, The View From Up Here, along with a few cool other digital extras. It's also going to be a space for you where we can get together on a monthly basis for video chats, hangouts, just to talk about what we're doing and how we're doing and what we're working on. This will include an offering from me, usually musical in nature. But lots of other great perks like streaming house concerts exclusive to patrons, early access to every episode of this podcast one day before release, as well as deep cuts that I had to edit out of the final mix for time for some of these episodes, but they're still worth a listen. And this is all going to be available at the low price of $5 per month. That's it, $5. No higher tiers to feel guilty about not, hooking onto. Everyone gets everything. And you can find me at patreon.com/Dan Haidt. So let's create something together, huh? Okay, enough of that. Let's get right to my conversation with Chuck Brodsky.
It was a lovely summer's morning, an off day in L.A. So thought one Doc Ellis, as he would later say. His girlfriend read the paper, she said, "Doc, this can't be right. Says here that you're pitching in San Diego tonight. We got to get you to the airport." So off Doc Ellis flew. His legs were a little bit wobbly, the rest of him was too. He took a taxi to the ballpark an hour before the game, gave a half-assed explanation, found the locker with his name.
Yeah, we were gonna talk a couple days ago, and you had just gotten the orders from the governor, right, for your county?
Yeah, now, since then, he's even made them more stringent. Effective Monday, I think, we're in a 30-day full-on lockdown.
Oh, wow.
Aside from essential errands.
30 days.
You know, I don't get mail at the house, so I have to go pick up mail at the post office, and
Oh, wow.
I'll do that once a week. And
Right.
you know,
Well, how are you doing otherwise?
I think I've turned a corner, actually, maybe 2 days ago.
Yeah?
I'm a little late to the party because I had gigs 2 weekends ago down in Florida, and I went down there ostensibly to meet up with my dad for spring training and do the handful of gigs that I book around that. And so, my last gig was 10 days ago. And then 2 weeks ago, and then I got home about 10 days ago. So up until that point, where most people probably had been sheltering in place already, I was still out in the world, out and about. And so I had to transition. I can remember that feeling driving up my driveway after the trip home from Florida and being very aware that nothing's going to be the same now. Like, as I drove up that driveway, I was leaving behind the world as I knew it. And we don't know what's coming, but I'm going up the driveway now, and I'm staying there. I'm sheltering in place, and the world has changed.
Yeah.
It was really weird. But so the first 5 days maybe, or 6-7 days even, I just was like everyone else, depressed and lost and confused and trying to figure out how the hell I'm going to make up all this lost income, which is beyond belief. But things are falling into place one by one, little things that take the bite.
Yeah. Well, it occurred to me, I was thinking, when this is over, people will be so eager to get out and get back to what they remember as normal, to the theaters, and get back to the clubs and get back to the things, even though it'll kind of hit hard a little bit financially. But I think they want to be entertained. They want to go see live music. I think people need that, and they want it, and they miss it. That's why it's all over Facebook. Everybody's playing concerts. So it's a big need.
There is. The thing is that we really don't know how things are going to play out. And one day you read one person's opinion that says we could be transitioning back to normal in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And someone else says it could be 18 months, or this could be seasonal. This could happen every year. And so there could be regular periodic disruptions to our lives moving forward, where we all have to shelter again like this for limited periods maybe. Or this period could last 18 months for all we know.
Right.
Which, getting back to what the response I was given to your question, or what you brought up, we may forget what those experiences are like a little bit. And when we finally do, if it takes some astronomical amount of period, like 18 months, by the time we do get out, just imagine, like, it's all these experiences are going to feel new again.
Oh, wow.
Going to the theater, getting together with people, going to a pub, all these things that we took for granted, we may end up being deprived of all that for so long that by the time we get to taste it all again, it's going to be like, oh my God, I don't even remember what this was like.
That's something that kind of adds a little silver lining to it, a little bit. Are you? Have you been inspired? I mean, you said you were up super late the other night working on music. Were you writing some songs?
Yeah, I have lots of stuff that I've started long ago, or even started recently that I didn't have time to work on for a while I was on the road, or didn't have the opportunity to really get focused on, because I was going to be leaving again, in and out, the nature of this life. But part of this whole coping mechanism is to understand I need to be productive, or I'll sit and rot, and I have a choice. So I'd rather not sit and rot. I've got time.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about that Twilight Zone episode of the guy who wanted to be all alone with his books at the library, and then his reading glasses fell off.
Yeah.
He was the only person left on Earth with no reading glasses, but all these books. And so careful with your reading glasses.
Exactly. Yeah. I've seen a couple of bios of you and things that people have written, and I think somebody had written that you said that you said to tell great stories you have to live an adventurous life. And you certainly have, right? I mean, I've only heard little clippets of it, but every once in a while something will slip out about, working on a migrant farm picking apples and hitchhiking across everywhere and what losing $1 million check? What was that all about?
10 million.
Oh, 10 million. Yeah. What was that for?
I think I was 21 years old, living in San Francisco after I had just hitchhiked out there, and I got a job through a friend with the Bank of California as a courier. And one day they sent me on foot a few blocks away to pick up a check from a big chemical company and deposit it by 12 noon at the commercial teller window.
Oh, man.
And I went and did this. It was a really stormy day, and I was a jeans and t-shirt, long hair and a beard kind of guy. I was a musician in this job. So I wasn't going to be caught dead carrying a briefcase to the financial district of San Francisco. So I went, I went without it, and I was given this envelope, and I stuffed it down the front of my pants, and I walked through the rain back to the bank. I got in the commercial teller window line, and when it was my turn and I reached for that envelope, it wasn't there. And because it hadn't been deposited by noon that day, it cost the chemical company $10,000 in lost interest. So,
wow.
The bank was responsible, and on Christmas Eve, I got my walking papers.
See, I mean, there's no surprise that you're full of inspiration and of stories of things to write about. I mean, it seems like everything that I've always felt like you've been very in tune to things happening around you and able to find a story in there to tell about it, or find the story that's already been telling, or just being very sensitive and listening for that story and being able to express it and tell it to other people. It's is that kind of a fair assessment of how you go about writing music?
Yeah, to a degree. Because of the nature of what I do, I need to be in tune. I'm not sure, if what came first, the chicken or the egg. Did I have this innate ability to hone in on the essence of the story, or did I develop that? I don't know. Yeah. Did I develop that because of a need to develop that? But yeah, I definitely try to look at things in terms of what might be valuable in this to share, what this might symbolize for other people. This could be an example of, or just does what I'm considering have weight, power to move somebody?
Yeah, and a lot of that is really weighty, heavy things. I mean, you've got like 6 or 8 songs that you've written about just the Holocaust alone and stories around that. I mean, it's not on a massive scale, but it's about little stories pulled from that time, like, Lily's braids. It's just this tiny little, string of braids that became this story and that added a layer of intensity to what was happening at that time. I mean, Warsaw in May, the guy playing violin do you just seek out these stories, or you just run into them and think, gosh, everyone needs to hear about this?
I seek them out. They seek me out. Other people send them to me.
Mm-hmm.
It happens in all sorts of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts with a commitment that I made to myself a long, long time ago, that I didn't want to waste my talents on writing songs that didn't feel meaningful to me. If I was going to do this, I wanted to go all in,
Mm-hmm.
Put all of my heart into it, write about things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then, there are other elements to being a career musician, and we all want to be unique. We all want to stand out for something that maybe only we do, or maybe not necessarily only we do, but, we want to stand out in a way.
Right.
And I wanted my mark to be made from, just being serious about what I do and serious about the subject matter I choose to write about, looking for things that feel meaningful to me as opposed to meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of songs out there, when I listen to them, they just strike me as rehashing a lot of the same things that have been written about thousands and millions of times by thousands and millions of other writers. And I wanted to be the guy that did something a little different, did something that was uniquely me.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm not saying that makes me special or anything like that, but that was my motivation, to be different, to present something that maybe other people weren't presenting. I mean, that's where my interest is. I love stories. I can remember as a really young kid being given Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits Volume 2. A really young kid. But those long story songs really roped me in as a kid. I didn't understand the language I was hearing at the time, but the power of story affected me. And on a level that was primal, I suppose, because I was too young, well too young to understand what these lyrics were saying. But it was just somebody delivering a story to me that was very gripping.
Yeah. And, well, I think, there's an example of that, for me at least, in some of your music. You write about these large scale things, small things within a large scale of things, the meaningful things. It would be probably a real effort to try to write something about the Holocaust as a whole, but the little individual stories are what matter and what people need to hear. And one of the things that stood out to me, and it wasn't one of those songs, but it was your song Rachel's Guitar. And the reason it spoke to me so much is because I didn't know Rachel. I didn't know who she was, but I immediately wanted to. I mean, it begins and you know exactly what happened. Rachel's guitar
was out of its case on the pulpit where cards and flowers were placed. Weak and exhausted and propped on a stand, homesick and lonely for Rachel's hands.
And I said, what a perspective to come from the instrument.
Rachel's guitar looked around for its friend and for the songs they'll never play again. And it ached for the way she would make it ring. And that was maybe the most heartbreaking thing.
And to say that the people there were not the only ones grieving this loss. That this old friend of hers that would never play those songs again is grieving that friendship too, that relationship, and it is. So that's why, I mean, that's how I'm convinced that you are a songwriter, because people can hear that, songwriters can hear that and have just a guttural, visceral reaction like I did. I can't listen to it without just getting emotional just because of it. And so I went out and I researched her, Rachel Bissix, and I got her music and I listened into it, and it's one of those where you find out about somebody a little too late, and you just wish you had more time. So
that's the beauty of recorded music, is that it still exists.
Yeah.
After she's gone.
Yeah. How did that even come to you? Was it? I mean, did you see it see your guitar up at the funeral, and then it just struck you as something so just poignant and tragic, or how'd that happen?
What it was.
Yeah.
The memorial for her. She lived in Vermont, and one year Folk Alliance was in Montreal, and some very, very wise person decided to schedule this memorial in the days right before Folk Alliance so that all these people passing through Vermont could come to it. It was awesome. It was really, really an awesome memorial. But the thing that struck me more than anything, and it was immediate, as soon as I walked in the door, and I saw the guitar up on the pulpit. It was the only thing up there. There were no people up there. All the people delivered what they were saying that day or singing that day from the floor below the pulpit. So that guitar was up there all by itself for the whole time. And I just couldn't help thinking about it, because we all have, every musician that plays an instrument has a personal relationship with that instrument. And that instrument gets played in only the way that that person can play it. And so it really struck me, standing there, that guitar would never be played in the same way again. It couldn't be. The songs could be played. Her songs could be played by anybody. But the way she played that guitar will never be played that way again. And I just started thinking about that connection between instrument and player, and so that's where that came from.
Wow, that must have been a real cathartic writing process, almost just a grieving process.
I can't really access the place that I was in fully to tell you whether or not I was grieving when I wrote it, but I wrote that song just to refer back to what you said. You called me a songwriter, which is probably the ultimate honor that anybody could ever bestow on me as a songwriter. And I would say that I wrote that song for my songwriter friends. I wrote that song for a very small audience. Some songs I write for as wide an audience as I possibly. Just really personal. I write them for myself, or I write them for a specific person because I know how much it might mean to them, and the song may end up being something I can carry out into the world and use regularly and affect other people in a similar way. But I really write personally. I write for myself. I write to touch myself. I write to touch people that I can immediately think of. And then by extension, I figure it will probably affect other people too if it affects me this way or if it affects this person this way.
Right, right.
You know, I've never really looked at what I do as being part of the music business or the music industry. I'm me doing what I do. I'm just trying to survive, try to make a living.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to play any game or achieve anything, because I don't know that there is anything to achieve. It's just, this is my life. I love it.
Yeah.
And this is what I do because I love this. And yeah, you mentioned earlier that it looks to you like I take a lot of risks and experience things. And I wanted to address that. I don't feel like I take reckless risks, but it came down to one big risk, you know, many years ago, when I had to look at the direction in life I was going to go. Do I pursue a degree in university, or do I pursue my real passion? And I made that commitment as an 18-year-old, and it was a full-on commitment, and I've never looked back. I've gone back to college a couple of times for night classes, thinking that, you know, it would serve me to pick up a degree and have it in my back pocket. But every time I did that, I just realized I was only giving myself an excuse to maybe bail one day. And so I dropped all that and just said, no, I'm deluding myself. What I really need to do is get more focused on my music. And
And you did.
Yeah. And I'm glad, I'm glad I did. I have no regrets about anything.
Yeah. You hitchhiked across the country and made your way. You blazed your trail.
Yeah, but I understood at that age that I needed life experiences before I would have anything to say, anything of value to say. What kind of wisdom does an 18-year-old have? Yeah, a certain amount of innate wisdom maybe, but what would I have experienced at that time? So I just figured any career that I want, that's long range. This is when I was 18 or 19. I was just looking at, you know, maybe 10 years from that point. But first I needed to work on my craft, needed to get better on guitar. I knew I wasn't a good enough songwriter, so I needed to work on that craft. And I needed to have life experiences to act, so I could have things that were real to write about. So, you know, it was a lot of patience, and it was a lot of looking, this master plan that wasn't really a plan at all.
Yeah. That's how those go. So these little moments that you talk about, you have so many great songs about little moments like that. I mean, just like Bill and Annie.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, stopping at a peach stand and meeting this guy, and just this brief moment about his life.
A little roadside stand. Man said his name was Bill. I said, I'm Chuck, and this is Annie. He said Annie was the one, only true love of his life. And they met at his wedding, but by then he had a wife. And it was during the reception in the spring of '64. She, his newlywed's best friend, followed him out the barroom door. Maybe his ring got smaller, maybe his fingers swelled, maybe he'd made a big mistake, and maybe time would tell.
And you painted such an incredible picture of that encounter. I mean, down to the look in his eyes, and it was very real to everyone hearing it. That it was an important moment. That it was something, like you were saying earlier, it was meaningful, and it was something that, well, gee, you know, I think other people, I'm sure other people have felt this. So I wonder how I can make this into a song and and share it with others. Seems like a very selfless thing for you to do when you're writing these songs. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know that I think in those terms though.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the rewarding feelings of making your creation better and better. Each little tweak for each new idea, each new thought, as that song grows from the initial idea and all the false steps you take, trying to get there, and you realize no, that line's no good, or you come up with a better approach. All that stuff is how I get my rewards. You know, we all have our things that are rewarding to us, and that's what it is for me, is that feeling of something getting better the harder I work it. And then that ultimate moment when I look at it all and I say, yes, I'm proud enough of this to sign my name to it.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So we just kind of jumped right into it. I'm interested on kind of going back and hearing about a little bit of growing up in Philly and your trips to the games with your dad, and, you know, what's the greatest thing that you can pull and remember from that time?
From my childhood?
Sure.
Oh, wow. That's really a tough question, man. I was very fortunate, though, because I grew up across the street from the junior high school. We lived on a corner, and we had ball fields in front of the house, and we had ball fields across the street to the side of the house. And there was always activity. You know, always people out in those fields. If they weren't playing baseball, they were playing soccer, or throwing a football around, or flying model airplanes or model rockets. But, you know, I had a big playground. And then up the street from the junior high school was an elementary school with the same, you know, another set of fields, and a lot of area to explore, ride my bike around, get lost, go out for the day. And that might be just that way of life that I probably still live today, but I don't think a young kid could live anymore unless they live in the country somewhere. You know, that idea of going out the front door and saying, "Bye, Mom."
Right.
She doesn't know where you're going. You don't know where you're going. You don't know when you're coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that, you know, what it really did was it had me in my own head a lot as a young kid. I mean, there were other people around. I had friends. We played ball a lot, but the fact that as a young kid you could leave the house and not come back for hours and just go out and explore on your own. It was safe to do that, and so it had me in my head, and I became that person who you know, thought a lot and just daydreamed a lot and was entertained by whatever thoughts came. And that probably has really served me well as a songwriter.
Yeah. Well, you know, you've got 2 full-length albums of baseball ballads. And what makes them so great, I think, for me at least, is some of them are just telling a really cool story. You know, like Doc Ellis. That's a cool story, and it's a fun one to listen to. It's a fun one to remember. But then you've also got the ones, you know, like Eddie Klepp and you know, and Richie Allen, and the ones that again, it's like I didn't know who Dick Allen was before I heard your song, because I wasn't a huge Philly baseball fan, and I didn't really follow it very much, but I did after I heard your song, and I looked him up. So it's those things where you write something, it's like people need to understand about these people and understand that this is something that's real. Tell me, did you watched Dick Allen play, and you saw how they treated him, right?
Yeah, I was a little kid at this time when he first got called up to the major leagues, And he was the first African American player the Phillies ever had of any kind of star caliber.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the time when the earliest African American ball players that integrated the major leagues were expected to just keep their mouths shut and their heads down and, play ball, be seen, not heard. Well, that's not real. That's not realistic.
Mm.
Dick Allen was a human being with
Mm-hmm.
emotions and reactions, and so if he reacted at all, it caused the sports writers and the fans to turn on him, and he got booed a lot by the hometown fans, but he was the best player on the team. He was actually one of the best players in all of baseball, and could very well get into the Hall of Fame this next election, the Veterans Committee.
Me and you, we never booed Richie Allen, and I never understood why people did. He hit a homer every time he stepped up to the plate. That's what I remember as a kid. Richie in the field out there by first base, the target of some mighty foul words. With his shoes he'd scrawl between the pitches, boo, in great big letters in the dirt. Philly fans, they've been known to get nasty. When Joe must go, they'll run him out of town. I saw Santa get hit by a snowball, then get hit again when he was down. Well, me and you, we never booed Richie Allen.
Well, and the song is throughout just defending him and how wrong the fans were and just how nasty people could be. But it turns into a really beautiful tribute to your dad.
Yeah.
Because he never did any of those things, and he, like you said, thanks for letting me have my heroes.
He set the example.
Yeah.
Positive example. Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of songwriting, is that you might be writing a song about one thing, but you have the opportunity when you're telling this story to slip in other things that might reflect what your own personal values are, or the things that you think are important to be told. It may not be something you'd obviously think of being associated with this person's story, but as the songwriter, or as any kind of a creator, you do have an opportunity to inject yourself, your way of thinking, your values into something, which kind of reminds me of a really interesting experience I had sitting around a campfire at the Kerrville Folk Festival a bunch of years ago. There was a woman that started to lay into me. Maybe I had made a critique of something in her song. I can't remember what triggered it, but she said, there's nothing of you in any of your songs. Well, first of all, I pretty well deliberately don't write about myself. I'm looking to tell other people's stories. But I think if you look at my songwriting, you will very clearly get a picture of who I am and what matters to me, what my values are. And that's what I said to her. That's the kind of thing that I would consider maybe the most important thing I could teach at a songwriting workshop or retreat, is that you don't need to be writing about me, but you can very well express who you are in maybe more artful ways, maybe more understated ways. Because everything you sign your name to is a reflection of who you are, really and truly, I think.
Sure. You know, you have a very specific and unique style to you. I mean, in your guitar playing, in your vocal style, in your writing. I have always been impressed by the kind of the through writing nature of your music. I mean, you don't have a lot of room for choruses or bridges or things like that. I mean, it just leaves you more room to tell the story. And I wonder when you decided to let go of form and I'm just going to tell a story. I don't care.
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I can give a precise answer because some of what influenced me to like these long rambling songs was just absorbing it by osmosis, listening to those early Dylan records. Before I could even understand what the language was about. But maybe that in combination with starting to go to Ireland regularly in the late 1990s and listening to Irish traditional songs and English and Scottish traditional songs. And that probably had an influence. And also, just realizing for myself that, like I said earlier, I'm not really a participant in the music industry, the music business. I mean,
right.
They can't do anything with a guy like me, apparently. Because if they could have, they would have a long time ago. But, here I am, still an independent musician, struggling to, get by like everybody else, and that's the way it's always going to be, I assume. Which is fine. It's my life, and I love it. But I guess I just recognized that I don't have the same needs as I don't have to follow the same rules that somebody writing commercially has to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very liberating.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that I get to look at whether or not a song has a chorus, should have a chorus, based on whether or not that chorus actually adds something to the song, as opposed to it being a formulaic thing that you have to have. So I never will opt for doing it because you're supposed to have it.
Exactly.
I will write a chorus sometimes and a bridge if it feels like it serves the song. But I will never, ever do it just to do it. And I think, that's probably mainly because I don't have to operate under the same constraints that somebody who's hoping to get songs covered by country artists or songs used for various purposes other than performing yourself. Like that's the reason I'm writing them.
Sure.
For me. And for that feeling I get it, even if I never sing that song publicly, but that feeling that I get signing my name at the end of completing my creation. That's my joy. That and delivering the music to people and getting the response that I enjoy getting. I mean, those are my joys.
Yeah.
But that there's nothing comparable, and I really don't know that it would even be that easy to understand for somebody that doesn't create, but that's the ultimate feeling right there. Being proud of something that I really worked hard, that I didn't settle for it being okay. I didn't settle for it being good. I didn't settle for it being pretty darn good. I only write a song if it feels like there's something there of meaning and depth there. And so a lot of subject matter I look at and say, it's a cool idea, but there's not enough depth. There's not enough there. I could tell the whole thing in eight lines, and then everything beyond that would be forced, contrived. But
well, that must be very liberating.
It's liberating not to have rules that I have to subscribe to.
Right.
that's the liberating part. The fact that I'm doing it for um, my own pursuit is the ultimate liberation, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not trying to please anybody
Mm-hmm.
other than myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do think of myself as a pretty good litmus test. I'm not going to say I think of myself as just Joe Average, but I think if something affects me on an emotional level, it's likely to affect other people in a similar way.
Mm.
And so I use myself as that first litmus test. But I subscribe to some very high standards for myself
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I want. That's what I want to. That's how I want to operate. My rewards are not going to be fame and fortune.
Right.
Not at the age of 60. It's unlikely at this point, right? So
Right.
the real reward in it is the feeling of satisfaction at the work I've done and the sharing it and knowing that it's made somebody happy or not feel so alone or whatever the feelings are that it might give somebody.
Mm-hmm.
If they consider those feelings valuable, then that's huge to me.
Yeah. Well, because what you said, because it's the thing that you don't plan for, you don't write it for somebody, you're not writing it with someone else in mind to sing it. It becomes it's a real gift when somebody decides, hey, that's something I'd like to share with other people too. And so, I mean, perfect example, David Lamott's singing your We Are Each Other's Angels, and it's his most requested song whenever he plays at a show. And he's honored to play it because it's a beautiful song, and it's spoken to a ton of people. I cover it all the time too. It's usually one of the last songs I play at a show just to send people home with. You've said you don't take a whole lot of credit for that, but it just kind of happened to you. Tell me about that.
Well, I had just hitchhiked from Philadelphia to San Francisco. I was 21. And at some point on that journey, a fellow hitchhiker said to me, "We are each other's angels." Uh, I don't know if people who didn't grow up in the same era that I did will understand this in the same way because people don't really hitchhike anymore. But back then, this would have been 1981, and it was like a tribe. Your fellow hitchhikers were your tribe, and you would occasionally find yourself way out in the middle of nowhere. People would often, in those situations, share food, a drink, or whatever, and just a few moments before it was time for that person to move on, try to get their ride. And some of those people I came across had some pearls of wisdom, and this person, whoever it was, said that to me. And then the day I arrived in San Francisco, I sat out in a place called Aquatic Park down near Fisherman's Wharf. And as I really truly believe and like to say, I think it was just my honor to be the one who provided the pen and paper that day, because I can't claim credit for the original idea, and I can't really claim credit for the writing of that song. I think I just picked up that pen, and the pen moved, and the song was done in not very much time at all. And it's a song I could never write today because of its simplicity. I've gotten way too complicated, and life's too complex now.
Oh.
I wrote that when I was 21, and it's amazing to me that almost 40 years later, I'm still singing it, and other people are singing it, and it's come to mean a lot more to me since writing it than it even did at the time. Especially given what I've seen that it means to other people.
Mm.
Because as a 21-year-old who may have freshly written that song, yeah, the sentiment is something I believe in, but I had no way of knowing that the rest of the world, or so many people out there, were going to feel the exact same way about those lines
Mm-hmm.
and embrace that song in the way that they have.
Mm.
You know, I guess what I'm saying is that I couldn't possibly have understood the power of it at the time because I hadn't lived enough life yet. I hadn't been out on my own long enough. And, you know, it was a well-intentioned song that probably took me another 10 years to even understand the true value of myself.
Mm. It's amazing when they grow with you,
Mm.
you know, and you grow with them. It's a real symbiotic relationship, those songs, man. Well, what's next for you now that you're stuck at home for a while, for at least 30 days?
Well, I'm working on new songs like we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And just trying to be productive. Just trying not to fall down the rabbit hole.
Mm.
The interesting thing, though, is that this social distancing isn't really that new to me because I live on a mountain in the woods in western North Carolina, and you know I don't have nearby neighbors, and you know half my life is spent on the road driving on interstate highways with trucks and people zooming by and all that stress. And when I get off the road, I often don't go anywhere for days and days. You know, it's not unusual for me to spend an entire week, 7 days without leaving the house because I don't need anything. I don't need to go anywhere. This is how I spend my life anyway. I live alone. You know, my marriage ended about 10 years ago, and so in that regard, it's not all that different. I think what is different is the suspension of obligations and places you have to be, the normal schedule. So it's open-ended. We don't know if this is going to be 30 days or 18 months. And it's just really interesting to take a deep breath and to experience a pause. I don't know that any of us ever have. I have never had a bona fide pause.
Right. I haven't.
In fact, I don't even know that I've ever given myself a vacation. I do things that are fun. I go away. I might be camping out at a folk festival for 18 days or whatever at Kerrville. But, you know, and I've got gigs on the way and I've got gigs coming back. I don't know that I've ever gone away where it wasn't somehow work related. So this idea of an open-ended period of time that is yours to do what you want with is new, untested, uncharted waters.
For everyone.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you are able to punch out some new ones, and I'll do the same. I'll try. I'm trying to write some new things. But don't feed the bears. And and as stressful, I guess, as it can be about the unknown, you know, sometimes we're given a Sabbath like this. And, you know, my wife was telling me weeks ago, because I don't stop. And she says, you need to take a Sabbath. And now we've got this extended Sabbath that we can just stop and pause and reflect and think about what's coming up next. So
that might be your song there.
Maybe. Maybe it is. So, gosh, man, this is awesome. Thanks for doing this. This is so much fun. I feel like it was just as close by as just hanging out. So be nice to be able to hang out in person again sometime soon.
Yeah. Well, whenever we can. Next time you're down this way, let me know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good talking with you.
It's great talking to you too. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope I see you later. 'cause it's time for me to go. That's my ride, just pulled over. And it sure was good to know you. So go answer your calling. Go and fill somebody's cup. And if you see an angel falling, won't you stop and help them up? 'Cause we are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. Keep each other going, show each other signs.
Well, that was awesome. That's a conversation I've been wanting to have for a very long time, and I had a blast. I hope you enjoyed it. Hey, like always, everything you heard about on here will be available on the episodes page over there at danhite.com, including all the songs, all the content, plus maybe a picture or two of Chuck as a long-haired, bearded, budding folk icon. Oh, and be sure to remember to visit the community over at patreon.com/danhite and join the conversation over there. It'd be great to have you along for the ride. Hey, thanks again, everybody. Stay well. Stay safe. Let's go make some stories.
Sometimes you'll stumble. Sometimes you just lie down. Sometimes you'll get lonely with all these people around. You might shiver when the wind blows, and you might get blown away. You might lose a little color. You might lose a little faith. But we are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. Keep each other going, show each other signs. So thank you for the water. Thought I was gonna die out here in the desert, but you quenched my thirst. Let's break a little bread together. Got a little mana. It was a gift from someone who was passing by and offered me a lift. We are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. We keep each other going and show each other signs.